everyone, welcome back. As you can probably tell, I am no longer in my uni house. I'm back home for Christmas at the moment, and so I'm filming in my living room, and this is the background that you'll probably be seeing for the next couple of videos. Today I'm going to film a recent reads video to catch you up on the stuff I've been reading recently. I've been reading quite a mix, to be honest. I've read some fiction, some non-fiction, and also some poetry, so hopefully you enjoy this video. Let's just get straight into the books. So firstly, I'm just briefly going to talk about two books that I read recently that I've already mentioned quite a few times in recent videos, so I won't dwell on them too long. And the first one is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. So many people are reading this book at the moment and absolutely loving it, and I do think it's worth all the praise it's getting. It's a magical, whimsical story that's based off Russian fairy tales, and it has a beautiful wintry setting and also a headstrong, subversive female protagonist, which I absolutely love. And so I really would recommend picking this up if it sounds like something you'd enjoy. I really did enjoy it myself, and in the end I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And the next book, which was a reread for me, was Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Elias Saenz. So this is a young adult novel that tells the story of two friends, Aristotle and Dante, over 2 summers, and it's about their individual growth and also the development of their friendship together. This is wonderful, insightful, and really raw storytelling that I would recommend to everyone. If you're a fan of YA or not, I would really recommend picking this up, and of course I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was actually a collection of poetry, and that is The Nation's Favourite Children's Poems that were selected by Spike Milligan. So the title of this collection is pretty self-explanatory. It is a collection of famous and well-loved children's poems, and the poems in this collection are actually split into sections. So there's a section that has poems about family, another section has poems about time, and another one, I think, animals, so that's pretty fun. So I really enjoyed reading this collection. I actually got given this to me when I was quite young, so it was quite a nostalgic reading experience for me. I recognised a lot of the poems in here from reading them to myself when I was younger and over the years, and also a lot of the poems I'd had read to me when I was younger as well, so that gave me a really nice nostalgic feel. But as well as this nostalgic aspect, I do think the poems in this collection are really brilliant. They're often quite humorous as well as heartwarming, and I do think there's a great selection in here. If you're interested, some of my favourite poems in here are The ABC, The Trouble with My Sister, and I Saw a Jolly Hunter. This is a really great collection of children's poems from a lot of brilliant authors, and I would recommend picking it up if you're looking for a gift for someone younger or just for yourself. It's a lot of fun, and overall I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Next I'm going to talk about another poetry collection that I read recently, and that is Equinox by Sheila Wilde. So this is a contemporary poetry collection that I actually received for my birthday last year from some family friends, and I believe that it's written by a poet who is local to my home here in the Lake District. So this poetry collection has quite a large focus on nature and one's surroundings up here in the north, which I really enjoyed about this poetry collection actually, because I've not read much poetry before that focuses on kind of natural imagery. I'm often drawn towards poetry which is more about issues in contemporary society or personal struggles, things like that. So I did really enjoy that about this poetry collection. Some of the imagery that was evoked was so beautiful, and I could relate to some quite a lot because of where I live, and I recognised a lot of the kind of imagery and the animals that the author was talking about. I did, however, enjoy some of the poems much more than others, and I did think some weren't necessarily so great, and so overall I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and I would recommend it to you if you live up north or you're interested in looking at some poetry that discusses nature. The next book that I read was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. So this is a non-fiction book that discusses what it is to lead a creative life. Because it's about creativity, you might assume that this book is written for people who are in creative industries or fields such as artists, musicians or authors, but it's not. Anybody can read this book. So Elizabeth Gilbert definitely has a unique and fresh take on what she thinks creativity is. She describes living a creative life as living a life that the individual loves and doing things that helps them flourish as a person. And what she does throughout this book is she encourages people to live as creative a life as possible, doing whatever it is that is creative to them. In her discussion of how we can all lead creative lives, the author discusses notions such as inspiration, curiosity and persistence, and these were all really interesting, and I think she made really great points. I didn't necessarily agree with everything she had to say about it, and I didn't really agree with her views on how things about creativity and inspiration come about, but nevertheless, I thought she made some really great points, and I thought this was quite inspirational overall, and I do think it is a really great read to kind of inspire you to live your best and most fulfilling life. So it wasn't the best non-fiction book I've ever read, but I did find it quite uplifting and quite inspirational, and especially because I do like to do a lot of creative things in my life, I think it definitely suited me for that reason, and so overall I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next I'm going to talk about a book that I listened to on audiobook, and that was I Let You Go by Claire Mackintosh. So this novel is a crime thriller novel, which isn't a genre that I tend to read much or a novel that I tend to be drawn towards, but there's been quite a lot of hype around this genre recently, and with hearing about it in different places, I fancied giving it a go, and I did quite enjoy this book. This novel opens with a car crash that actually kills a 4-year-old boy, and when the driver hits the child who was crossing the pavement, the driver drives away. And then what happens is the story splits into 2 perspectives, and so we see the results of this crash from 2 different points of view. One is from the point of view of a police officer who is working on the case to try and figure out who the driver was, and the other perspective is from the perspective of a woman who was directly affected by the crash. So this was not the best novel I've ever read by a long way, and a lot of the aspects of the novel which I usually enjoy the most, such as character, were severely lacking. I didn't really feel like the characters were all that believable, and I didn't see much character development at all. However, it did do the job for what I was in the mood for. So I listened to this book on audiobook, which was a lot of fun. I did find myself to be completely hooked by the storyline, and I did want to keep listening, and I think I listened to it over the course of a couple of days, and so I really was hooked, to be fair. I really did enjoy the fast-paced, shocking kind of plot-driven aspect of this novel, which is not what I'm used to reading, as I've said, but it was great for that, and so if you are looking for something to kind of fulfill that side of things, then I would recommend this. I'm not really sure if it's the best for this. I'm sure there are better ones within its genre, but overall I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars, and I would recommend listening to it on audiobook if you're going to pick it up. Finally, the most recent novel that I've read is The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. So this is a novel that I've had my eye on for a while. I've wanted to read Jeffrey Eugenides for quite a long time. I'd heard brilliant things about his writing, but I was never really sure if I wanted to pick this up or not, due to its kind of odd topic and title, but I decided that I was just going to give it a go myself and kind of formulate my own ideas about it, and I found it in a charity shop, to be honest, for like £1.50, so I thought, why not? So this novel is told from the collective viewpoint of some men who retell the story of their adolescence back when they lived opposite 5 Lisbon girls who were sisters and who all eventually committed suicide. Like I said, this is the most recent novel I finished, and so it's still quite new to me. I haven't really had much time to formulate my opinion on it, I don't think, and I finished it feeling quite unsure about how I feel about it, and so I'm going to try my best to tell you kind of my thoughts on it at the moment, but I think I need a bit more time to reflect on it and really get my head around how I feel about it. So there were certainly aspects of this novel that I absolutely loved. Jeffrey Eugenides was brilliant in this novel at creating a sleepy but kind of sultry atmosphere in the town in which these characters lived. His writing was so rich and so wonderful, and he really did transport me to the place. And also the perspective that this novel was told through was really brilliant. Because it was told through the point of view of these men kind of retelling their adolescence, it was a completely unreliable narrative, which I really enjoy, but also even more so because you could tell that these men, when they were younger, loved and even idolised these Lisbon sisters, and so it was tinged by that. And I thought this perspective was fascinating and really unique. I also loved the small town setting of this novel and seeing all the different neighbours and the ways they interacted with each other, especially during the time when the Lisbon sisters were going through a lot of trouble. That was really interesting. I love small town settings, I always have. My favourite book ever is To Kill a Mockingbird, and one of my favourite aspects of that is seeing all the different people who live in the neighbourhood and the way they interact. And I also read Joanna Cannon's book The Trouble with Goats and Sheep earlier this year, which is set in a small town, and that was something that I really loved about that novel as well. So I really liked that aspect of this novel. Well, I did really enjoy these aspects of this novel, and I thought it was brilliantly crafted, and Jeffrey Eugenides really did a wonderful job with it. And also just the premise behind this novel was really interesting, kind of the idea of 5 girls who were going through such a difficult time that they committed suicide, but we don't actually see anything from the point of view of the girls themselves. You know, that's just fascinating to me and a really brilliant idea. But while I did enjoy all of this, I did feel quite uncomfortable reading the novel. There was such blatant romanticising and even sexualisation of these young girls who were going through such a difficult time and were clearly very young and clearly depressed, and that did make me feel really uncomfortable while reading the book. And so I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I thought it was amazing in some ways and quite unsettling other ways, and I'm not quite sure where I stand on it yet, so I'm going to take a bit more time and reflect, and maybe I'll get back to you when I've kind of sorted out my thoughts a bit. So those were some of the books that I've been reading recently. I hope you enjoyed this video and hearing what I thought about them. I'd absolutely love to know what you've been reading recently, and hopefully if you let me know down below we can discuss them and maybe I'll be able to pick up a few recommendations from you guys. I also just quickly want to say while I'm here that the other day I reached 100 subscribers on this channel, which is so amazing to me, and I don't want to go on about it, but it really means a lot to me. This has been such a brilliant journey so far, and I'm really loving being on YouTube and discussing books with you guys, and so I'm having so much fun. I just really want to say thank you. So that's all for this video. I'll see you soon with a new one. Bye.